Alright guys, so now that Den of Thieves 2 Pantera is currently streaming on Netflix and is within the top 10 most streamed shows slash movies on Netflix at the moment, I thought it was the perfect time for us to talk about this film, review this film, especially since I never got to cover it on the channel originally when I seen this film in theaters in January. So with that being said, let's get into our movie review for Den of Thieves 2 Pantera. Let's go. Den of Thieves 2 Pantera is brought to us by the director Christian Gudegast and is actually the same director who directed the original film Den of Thieves 1 back in 2018, which I actually also got to see in theaters during that time. So this film is 7 years in the making. What took so long? Why did it take almost an entire decade for us to get a part 2 of the first film, even though the first film was fantastic? I have no idea, but I'm just glad that the sequel is finally here and that we did eventually get it. Now, this film stars O'Shea Jackson Jr. as the character Donnie Wilson, a world-class thief, and co-starring to him is Gerard Butler, who's playing the character Big Nick inside of this film. And when it comes to the plot of Den of Thieves 2, Lawman Big Nick O'Brien gets embroiled in the treacherous and unpredictable world of diamond thieves as he pursues career criminal Donnie Wilson to Europe. So that being said, this is a direct continuation from the first film where Big Nick sort of has this grudge that Donnie Wilson got over on him, and he makes his way to Europe to pursue him and to find him and finally arrest this guy that he's been hunting and chasing for years. Now, to start this review, I'd love to get into my positives for Den of Thieves 2 Pantera. And for my first positive of this film, I want to talk about the character development inside of this movie. Whereas in the first film, we got bombarded with a huge cast of characters, an entire crew for us to get to know and learn, but you don't really get the insight on these characters too much. You sort of just have this outside view of them. Inside of this film, it really takes the time to flesh out every single character involved in the plot, especially our main two leads here, and you get to know them as people. You get to know what their backstories are, where they came from, where they grew up. This movie fully fleshes these characters out and makes them feel real and brought to life as it slowly builds the plot from the beginning of this film all the way into the end. Now, it reminded me of what you'd see in a film like Guardians of the Galaxy 2, one of my favorite Marvel films of all time, whereas you can make a direct comparison between Guardians 1 and Guardians 2, where Guardians 1, similar to Den of Thieves 1, is a straight up action thriller. Part 2 of both of these film franchises are more centered around getting to know the characters more now. With that being said, the characters aren't the only thing that matters. What also matters in a film like this is the plot line and the writing. So that brings us to my next positive in this film, that being the writing and the overall story. Now, in this film, it really breaks it down to the audience how they're going to be doing this heist. You really get into the nitty-gritty, into all the details of the planning of such an event like this, how intelligent these characters are and how intelligent this film is in general. Now, the result of that is you getting more of a slow burn type of film where you have to really, wait for things to happen. But quite honestly, I didn't mind it too much because I was really relating and connecting with everything we were being shown here. Now, I don't want to spoil things too much, so we're not going to touch on the story too much, but I did thoroughly enjoy the story and the writing for this film. Now, my next positive with this film, the next thing that I'd love to highlight is the acting inside of this movie. Now, O'Shea Jackson Jr., I of course originally found him as an actor from the Straight Outta Compton film where he plays his father inside of that movie. He plays Ice Cube, right? And how much he got lost in that role with how much he looked like his father. I absolutely loved him inside of that film. Then we get him inside Den of Thieves, the first film, where in 2018, that's about 3 years after Straight Outta Compton. He did an amazing job in that movie too. He ends up, by the end of that film, spoilers for Den of Thieves 1, you shouldn't be watching a review for part 2 if you haven't seen Den of Thieves 1. Now, at the end of that film, come to find out he's the mastermind behind everything. So now going into Den of Thieves 2, the audience has this information that he's, the most bright and intelligent character in the movie. And I love the way O'Shea Jackson Jr. portrays this. I love the way it comes across. I love the way he code switches and he puts on different acts inside of of this film. Now, I gotta say, you did put on a little too much weight, my boy. I don't know why, if you were going to be, had 7 years to prepare for a mainstream Hollywood film, that you wouldn't get back into shape like you did for those past films, why you lost yourself for this movie. I don't know what was going on there, but as far as the acting is concerned, he did a fantastic job, as well as the rest of the cast. We are introduced to a new crew here. They bring these new characters in, which again is important for building and fleshing out these characters because of all of these new characters added into the heist crew, while also fleshing out the Big Nick character. He does an amazing job. Gerard Butler, I love what he adds here inside of this film. The way he plays this jaded lawman who's now retired now, but still holding this grudge and trying not to show it throughout this entire movie. But as the audience, can we really trust this guy? I don't know. But quite honestly, at least from my perspective, he does end up winning me over, and somehow in this criminal world seems a bit trustworthy now. We also did get a cameo from UFC fighter Ciryl Gane inside of this movie, which I appreciated because it brings us back to the first film where you got Max Holloway, and I believe you got Michael Bisping, if I'm not wrong, inside of that first original film. In this one, they're continuing with the theme of highlighting UFC fighters. Why? I'm not really sure, but as a UFC fan, I personally enjoyed that special touch of this movie, so shout out to Ciryl Gane, who was in this film. Now, with all that being said, I did like a lot about this movie, but it's time for us to move into my negatives for Den of Thieves 2 Pantera. And for my first negative with this film, I'm going to say the lack of action that you get here. Now look guys, in the first movie, one of the main highlights was how much action they really threw at you, how many heist scenes you got to do. These guys were hitting multiple heists inside of that movie. And now in the second film, you only get really one heist. It starts off, this movie opens up with an action scene, and then you don't get one for the entire movie up until the very end, up until like the late third act. I didn't like that at all. They should have at least thrown something in the middle here to hold the audience over. We definitely did not get enough, especially for what this film is listed as, an action thriller film. You do not get too much of that. If anything, this is more of a drama movie. Now, moving on to my next negative with this film, and that's that it didn't surpass its original film. Look guys, as a sequel, you're looking to go bigger, go better, and this movie fails to do that completely. When you compare the first film to this one, I can see how some people going into the second movie would be let down after watching it, which I assume is why the critic rating for this film is sitting at around 60% right now. Look guys, the first movie is like this thriller modern day classic, I would personally call it. I love the original Den of Thieves. It's something, me and my dad have bonded over that original film because it's that great of a heist movie, whereas in this film, we're just not hitting those standard levels, even though I did enjoy myself with this film. Regardless, now, that wraps up my negatives for Den of Thieves 2, and let's go into my overall review for Den of Thieves 2. Look, overall, I love that this was directed by the same director. It gives it the same style and feel for the most part. He definitely stepped up his directing inside of this film. I love his camera shots, the panning, and so many other things Christian Gudegast managed to capture on screen inside of this movie. The acting here is solid all the way through. They brought in a fantastic cast. Gerard Butler may be the best in the cast in this film, but overall, they all did a fantastic job. O'Shea Jackson Jr. continues to surprise me with his acting chops and his ability to perform at a high level. There's way less action than the first film, which is a bit of a problem if you're wanting to maintain the attention of the audience, but quite honestly, regardless, I enjoyed this movie the entire ride through. I loved all the storytelling, all the building. I love the character development that you got to see here. And I love that this movie respected its audience enough to expect you to be able to pay attention to all the fine details going on here as we built up to the big third act climax, which by the way, the third act inside this film, amazing. It makes it worth sitting through this slow burn type of movie. Now, with that being said, I'm going to give you guys my official rating for Den of Thieves 2 Pantera. I give this film a 8 out of 10. It gets the 8 out of 10. I think it's slightly better than what the critics are saying it is. I side, a little more with the audience side here in terms of my rating, and quite honestly, I enjoyed myself with this film. I do like this movie. I do still think the original is superior and is better than this film though. And now that it's on streaming, I would recommend that you go ahead and check it out now that it's not going to, cost you a full price in theaters by the time I'm reviewing this film. And also the ending of this movie, which I'm not going to get into plot details, but it was a very nice touch. I liked what they did with the ending of this movie. So all that being said, guys, I'd love to know your thoughts on Den of Thieves 2 Pantera down in the comment section down below. Did you enjoy this movie? If you haven't already seen this movie, will you be watching it after seeing this review? Let us know all that down in the comment section down below. And as far as what we do here on Demigod ENT, we do film and TV reactions and reviews. If you're interested in this movie based content, you're in the right place. Hit subscribe, hit the like button if you enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you in the next one, guys. Peace.